This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson.
Yes, hello. This is your host, Harry Wilkinson, and this is the Spirit and Wellness Show. This is the show where we take a look at the days and weeks, events, happenings in the world of politics, entertainment, technology, you name it, whatever it is that we interact with on a daily basis. And we take a look at those stories from a higher perspective. We take a step back. And we look at them as part of our own spiritual experience. And if you've listened to the show before, you know what I mean by that. You know that the perspective that I take is a metaphysical one, in which we are at the highest level connected as one, if you will. The divine mind is a term I like to use. You can use any term that you like, but at that highest level, we are creating everything around us, and we create these stories, these situations, these holograms, these versions of reality in order to experience things and to have certain types of experiences. It's similar to, going to the movies or reading a book. Why do you do that? Well, you do that to experiencing something that you don't normally experience in your everyday life. Or just because you're bored and you want to get out of your own head or your whatever's going on in your world. So you engage in another one. Well, it's kind of like that. We create a world in which we feel vulnerable, feel small, or feel endangered or threatened, or on the other side of the coin, we feel loved and happy and joyous, all of these emotions. And we create a version of ourselves, which is, let's just say, kind of a smaller version of who and what we really are. The truth of who we are is so much bigger, so much grander, so much more powerful. But to play in this game, in these human games, you have to be smaller. You have to have certain vulnerabilities. You have to be have certain problems that you need to overcome. So when we look at the stories that affect us in the world as a group, it's helpful, I think. For me it is, and hopefully for others who tune into the show, it's helpful to take that step back and look at what we're creating and why we created it, and then go into it. Go into if it's an issue or a story that really stirs up some emotions for you. Go into that. Take the energy from that, and find out where it leads you, because where it will always lead you is ultimately to a oneness. Use it to remind you of who and what we really are. So that's kind of what I do here, and today we're going to be talking about the media. And of course, the media plays a very important role in what I was just talking about, because the media are essentially the gatekeepers who present us with these stories. But that's changing in the transition era. And we'll talk about that as well. Now, we're also going to talk about what the future might hold for the media and other forms of media that are occurring. But first, I wanted to talk about the platforms upon which we often interact with media, because those are tools that we use that some people find to be a bit confounding, and particularly, older generations, I would say, probably Gen Xers and on up, sometimes have difficulty in knowing how to balance the use of these tools. Everybody's got a cell phone, and most of them are smartphones now, so that you can be on your phone and be reading articles and interacting on Facebook and answering emails and all of that sort of thing. And what some people are finding is that these tools that we use are sucking up their time, if you will, are taking away a certain peace of mind, I guess. And I say it's older generations because, if all you know is the internet and, and the cell phones and all of those things, as many, young people and teenagers do, they don't remember a time when you didn't have those sorts of things. And you had to deal with free time or downtime a little bit differently. You had to search harder for things, and you had to, go take a walk to get to places and things like that. So, I find that some people are advocating for, I guess, what they would call a block out, or a no technology zone, where there's no internet, there's no phone, there's nothing, and they take that time to do some important things, like perhaps meditation, or just sitting and being still, and kind of reconnecting with their own thought process. And it's interesting, and I think it's an important thing to do. But I'm not sure that you need to. I mean, if that's helpful to you to do it that way, certainly you should pursue it. But as I've said about the media, in on this program, there are people, particularly people who are following a spiritual path, who find, the stories in the media to be upsetting. And so what they decide to do is just not engage, turn off the TV, turn off radio, not listen to it at all. Which can work briefly for a while, but unless you're willing to live on a mountaintop, you're always going to have to interact with media in some way. So to me, the better option is not to resist these stories that come at you that you don't want to hear about or that make you uncomfortable, but instead to embrace them in the way that I explained before, in which you go into these stories and look at them from a different perspective and recognize the truth about them, that they're not bad or good. What Donald Trump said today, may bother you on, push your buttons on a certain level. But if you take that step back and you take a look at this creation and the things that he's saying and how people are responding to that and what that leads to and how it changes things, and you see the energy that flows from that, you recognize that this is something that you created to get a fuller understanding and also to experience these certain things. So I take a similar perspective on that as with things like internet, cell phone, all of those technologies that do tend to be very pervasive, and they do tend to be something that you can get lost in if you're not careful. But for me, I find, and this may be just because I may be more in touch and in tune with my feelings and my body than many other people. But I know when the time to step away from the computer is. I can feel it. My body feels it. My mind feels it. It's like there's a lack of energy. Sometimes I feel a little bit drained, and when I start to feel that, I know it's time. I know when it's time to put the smartphone away or the tablet away and just concentrate on something else, or go read, or do other things that I need to do. My body tells me, the rhythms of my body and the energy that I feel tells me. So, and again, if it's helpful that you have a time when you say, none of this, I'm going to just, not have any technology in my life for this period of time, that's okay. But I don't think that, first of all, I'm not sure that that's particularly practical, although you probably can do it for a while. But the chances are that something's going to happen that gets you back in, and before you know it, there you are again, and you're saying to yourself, you're cursing yourself, oh, why am I doing this again? Why am I engaged in this again? So rather than go through all of that and demonize yourself for doing these sorts of things and demonize the cell phone for being there and all of that, I just feel like it's better to go with it, engage with it, and just be aware. Practice presence with it. Be aware of what you're doing when you're on the cell phone. Be aware of the energy that's maybe leaving your body, and be aware of when it's time to step away. Once you build that awareness, you can be with all of this different technology in the same way that you are with anything else in the world. You can engage with it. You know when to put it down. You know when to walk away. It doesn't become this threatening thing, or this overwhelming thing, or this thing that monster that has a mind of its own that's taking energy from you. You are in control of it. So that's kind of my take on those tools that we use to access media. So now I want to talk about media on several different levels, and how it affects the transition era. The transition era is a term that I've been using to talk about this time. This time that we're living in, and the changes that are happening. I mean, we live in an era where things are transforming right in front of our eyes, basically. And seeds have been planted for social change that is now starting to occur, but it's happening in a I won't say it's haphazard, but it's not happening in a direct way. In some instances, it's forward and back kind of thing. And so we're seeing issues such as, Black Lives Matter, issues about race. We're seeing issues about income inequality really taking center stage, really taking hold, really changing. We're seeing, the way that we think about the world changing. And particularly in science, we're seeing the way that we perceive what reality is and means, and what is reality. We're seeing that change too. So we're seeing a fundamental change in the way that we look at the world, our understanding of the world. Things like quantum physics lets us know how much we are creating the very world that we think is something that's outside of us. And this is more and more becoming people, everyday people are becoming aware of it, not just, scientists or people who gravitate towards the mystical and study philosophy and all of those things, but everybody can now get a sense of it. We can get a sense of our own connection, how we are all connected, and we have a very concrete example of that we use every day, which is the internet, which literally connects us into one mind, quite literally. So all of these things are changing our world rapidly. And so I look at different aspects of the transition era, the economy, politics, all of those things. And media is a very important part. We've seen the transition of media over, I would say, the past 20 years. And we've seen the introduction of what they call new media being bloggers and the internet and things like Huffington Post and other what they call disruptors of traditional media. So the way it works, or the way it worked, traditional media were the gatekeepers. And traditional media being broadcast, network news, and newspapers and radio. And in the old days before television, it was just radio and the newspapers. And they were the gatekeepers. So the people who owned those outlets, the people that owned the networks or the television stations or the radio stations or the newspapers, they made the decisions about what information was going to be given to people. And that's the way the media has been for, decades, until a new situation arose via the internet. So that now people can, with the help of tools like Google and such, can go online and find information for themselves that either isn't being broadcast, or the gatekeepers have chosen to ignore or aren't aware of. And we can build our own, sort of information system, our own news system, because of we have the access to information that before we just simply didn't have access to, unless you worked in a newsroom or you had, a friend who worked at, AP or something like that. You didn't normally have access. You could find things, but you'd have to. It would be very time consuming to go and search through things and fact check things. And now you can do it instantaneously. And more so now as the tools become better, you've got things like you've got a smartphone that you can, voice activate and ask to search for certain things. And so all of that has rapidly changed the landscape in the transition era. But more so is than just the content is the way that content is now being delivered and being absorbed. And I'm talking about the news. So what's happened is that for various reasons, particularly, and a lot of this has to do with the advent of 24-hour news cable stations that are trying to get ratings and keep their ratings up. But more and more news can't be delivered in a straightforward fashion. It used to be, news was very, if you were a journalist, you presented the facts. You were neutral. You didn't show, any favoritism or any particular political slant on anything, and you didn't, try to make any personal statements or judgments. You just gave the news. Well, increasingly over time, as I say, over the past 20 years, maybe even more, what's happened is that there has become a blurring of lines between news, entertainment, and opinion. So that what's going on now is that people can't just listen to news facts anymore. I won't say everybody, but more and more people want to get their news given to them with a particular slant to it, with a particular political point of view. So you have things like Fox News, which presents the news as conservatives want to hear it. And then you have, an attempt on the left, MSNBC, for a while, and they still do to a larger degree, though that seems to be changing, presenting news that is something that people who are more liberal will be willing to hear. Now, CNN, still somewhere in the middle, but they tend to be more also leaning to more liberal, but they do make an effort to try to stay in that middle ground. But they are, interestingly enough, the least popular of the news networks, Fox being number one and MSNBC being number two. So it's pretty clear that audience-wise, it's appealing, apparently, to hear the news given to you from a point of view that is similar to your own, that you don't find objectionable. And that's a new thing. It really is. It's a new kind of thing. And it's a kind of situation where people just are looking at the world in different ways and don't want to particularly be bothered to change their worldview about anything or to look at it from a different point of view. So that's something that, is I don't see that changing particularly as we go on. But I do see it becoming, how do I put this? I do see it becoming more important in people being able to create the world or live in the world that they want to live in. And well, I think it's important that we understand that there are other worldviews and that there are other ways of seeing the world, even though we may disagree with them. But it's important to um, really understand that neither one of those is the truth. And I think that as we progress, as people continue to see things from one side or the other side, you finally come to the realization that neither side is real, and none of that is the truth of things, the truth of who and what we are. Otherwise, as I said, we're creating this game, this human game, and we'll play it by the different rules that we have. And if part of that is I need to, approach things from a liberal perspective, or I need to look at things from a conservative perspective, well, that's part of the game, and that's where that leads to. And ultimately leads to the understanding of the illusory quality of all of it. So there's that. I think that as we head further into this transition era, we become aware of something beyond those limited perspectives, and with the help of things like the internet, we can seek out and find what we want to find. And again, with the realization that there is no real truth in any of it, but part and parcel of the illusory game that we're playing. And speaking of this, and I think one of the big major technological innovations was released this week, and that is virtual reality. The Oculus Rift, which is a virtual reality program that includes a headset and cameras, and which you can plug into and be in different parts of the place, a room, and eventually, in different parts of the world, you can see and virtually be anywhere you want to be. It's hit a few snags in that, so many people apparently want this that there have been delays in the delivery of it, and some people have had to have their money refunded. But once they work all of that out, I think this is going to be a major thing. And in fact, virtual reality has been used quite a bit for a lot of different things. It has a lot of great potential, not just in gaming, but for instance, there is in Utah, a police department that is developing a virtual reality program that will help police officers de-escalate real life confrontations. And they are working at University of Utah. Developers are working on something called BEST police training, best police training, which is a virtual simulation that tests officers' use of body language, tone of voice, word choice, and physical proximity when dealing with civilians. So they are planning that this is going to be used sometime next year, apparently. virtual reality has also been used to help soldiers relieve their PTSD. It's called exposure therapy. An exposure therapy, just regular exposure therapy, is an approach, a behavioral approach that's been used to treat post-traumatic stress disorder by basically exposing the patient to their fear and helping them to overcome it in a safe environment. Well, with virtual reality, now you can virtually expose a patient to these things and use exposure therapy that way to help them overcome whatever it is that is, their fear-inducing situation. And so that's been being used for several years now. That's been being in use. So it's not. It hasn't been available to the general public until this week, and now it is. And it's going to change the way that I think we do business. You can have meetings across the world and not leave your home. You can experience situations, lifestyles, ways of living in a virtual environment. And it's basically kind of a mimicking or a reflection of what I was talking about earlier on the show, about the idea that we create these worlds and we live in them, even though they are not the truth about who and what we are. So we now have another concrete example of this perspective of what we do on a spiritual level. So it's fascinating stuff. I think the media continues to play and will continue to play a role in speeding along a lot of the changes and transitions that we're going through. And also helping to illuminate our own consciousness. So until next week, have a wonderful, wonderful